We opened in April of 2021. We have an amazing operator at that location who's become our chief of operations for the entire Flex company now. If you have the right people in place, it makes everything else easier.
I think this is another example of Connor dropping exceptional value bombs. What is happening, beautiful people? Welcome to the Build Your Gympire podcast. It is your place to get real world information to grow your gym, grow your fitness business in ways that you, your team, your community, the people you serve, and not least importantly, your bank account are going to feel absolutely awesome about. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of not having that grumpy grizzly bear, Mark Innes, to take us off stream here. He's going to be recording here in just a little bit, but I have the distinct pleasure to talk with Connor Flahive, one of the co-founders of Build Your Gympire. He's been I would consider him a great friend. He probably considers me an annoying number that he wishes he didn't give out back in the day, but a great friend and just an absolutely fantastic gym owner and business owner. And we are honored to have him today. We're going to go through his origin story and talk about how he has built first the Flahive's location, the original FAST. What was it? Flahive's Advanced, or I forget what your acronym was. Yeah. Flahive's Advanced Speed
Strength Training.
Grown that to an absolute mega facility in its own right. And now has expanded the Flex with 2X's brand into 3 locations on its own. So that's 4 locations total. He's adding 2 more in the next year. We've been fortunate enough to kind of work with him on the marketing side for a couple of those. He's going to give us the whole story. We're going to open the kimono, go into his background, how he got here. And if you are someone that is looking to grow your small group training business and scale in ways that I think keeps the stress down and the blood pressure down and the profitability exceptionally high, this is a great episode for you to listen to. So, Connor, where do you want to start? What's the story, man?
You tell me, man. Do you want to talk about our intro story? It was the best thing ever. The first, I was in college. I think you were in college. It was the first ever seminar I ever went to, and I happened to sit directly next to this beautiful man that's in front of you. Talk about coincidence. Talk about is it happenstance?
Yes.
Yeah. That was pretty wild. And then we were around the same age, and then we stayed in touch, and then we connected a couple of years ago. You kept telling me no, you kept telling me no, you kept telling me no. And then I was just persistent, and then I got you to say yes, and then we've connected again, and now we're doing these cool things.
I like it. We may remember it in different ways. I don't think I pushed you away too hard, but we'll go with it. Yeah. I know I was the D3 guy, but the jury's out on who the better athlete was. Mr. D1 fullback, Northern Illinois highlight film. You can go way back in the way back machine and see Connor wearing old number 41 for the Huskies.
47.
47. My bad.
I don't think there's any jury for that. I think that's signed, sealed, and delivered, my pal. I think you're the only one holding out, whatever hope that you have. Yeah, I'm going to keep you on track here because Mark is not here right now. But I had what I feel like is right around that time frame of like the 2009 to 2000, maybe 12 or 13 era of gym owners. I feel like I have a very similar story. Ex-athlete that went and followed all the warehouse gym style of training and the minimalistic, what's it called? The
just out and set up.
Yeah, the build out. Yeah, just as low overhead as possible. And I played football in college, and then I graduated with an exercise science degree and went back to my neighborhood that I grew up in and tried to set up shop. And as a lot of other people in the same position started out, I wanted to train athletes and I wanted to make a career and living out of it. And I quickly realized I opened up in April 1st of 2011. So I had not a good April, but like, hey, this isn't that bad. And then I went through the summer and I had all these football players that I essentially had from the high school that I went to, and everything was going well. And then August hit, and all of them went back to their sport. And I was like, holy shit, what am I going to do? So to make a long story short, I started training adults in a women's boot camp, and most of those women were athletes, parents of mine. And so then we just continued to build from there. We moved from that location, expanded, knocked down a couple walls, expanded a little bit more, moved into another location. And then we are in our current location, which is our quote unquote headquarters, Flahive's. In this location, we have youth athletes, middle school athletes, high school athletes, college athletes. So the whole athlete performance side of it. And then we have your typical like large group classes, as well as we've made the transition probably about 6 or so years ago to having small group personal training. And we have, as I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, we have gone all in on the small group personal training.
So, because I remember some of the story for those of you that are listening to this, is your first episode and intro to our world. Connor, Mark, and I, we shared a bunch of stuff on how to get that first critical mass of clientele, right? Even if you don't have money to spend on ads, so on and so forth. You did a really great job taking care of people. You went back to somewhere where you had a bit of a connection, right? And leveraged the power of free in a very strong way. You served the heck out of the people that you worked with. When you needed to expand into an additional demographic, you leverage the power of the current network, right? The athletes that already knew, like, and trusted you. The parents already knew, like, and trusted you to train their athletes. You say, hey, maybe we can train you too. They start jumping on. You take the same principles of serving the heck out of them, giving them a great experience, making it fun, making it remarkable, referable, et cetera, et cetera. And next thing, you're breaking down walls. I remember there for a few years, it was like, God, like, Connor's expanding again. Holy shit. Like, I remember, I feel like the first location, you might have had like one half of the small little warehouse, and then it was like you had the two separate halves, and then you were into the bigger location, and so on and so forth. And so I know for a long time it was leveraging the power of free and the network. Eventually, I know you jumped onto doing what a lot of us were doing at the time, right? The Fit Mom type challenge ads, right?
Yep.
And
2014 right there, man.
Yep.
What's great, I was actually just talking to our new general manager here at our headquarters location. Is I would say maybe we signed, or maybe we had like 24 something, for some reason that's sticking out in my head, of people that took us up on that Fit Mom offer. We ran in April of 2014. We have 13 of the women still in our gym. Awesome. Still members. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was like, it was a lot of fun. And like you said, we took care of our people and they've taken care of us.
I like it. Very cool. And so at what point in the timeline, because at that point you're still doing relatively large group stuff, right? Charging in the realm of 150 to 200 a month for those folks. What were you charging the athletes at that point?
Athletes, we were probably around $17 to $20 a session. Okay. For 2 sessions a week, we were anywhere from 175 to 200, and 3 times a week, we were anywhere from 230 to 250.
Gotcha. How big were those groups at the time for the athletes?
I'm not sure. Maybe anywhere from 8 to 12 or so, 8 to 15.
So still relatively small group, high touch.
Absolutely. Stuff. At that point, athletes were our bread and butter for sure. It was all the large group classes for adults. It was definitely, not to say that's probably the worst thing I could say, but it was definitely like an additional stream that I knew I needed to have. But athletes would, like, if we were to say, hey, we have a 5 p.m., we have a lot of interest for adults, it was like, hey, we can't even think about that because our athletes are right there. So athletes were extremely high on our priority list.
Yeah. You can't say the adults were an afterthought because you took such great care of them that half of those people from the initial one are still there. Right.
I pray to God that none of them was here.
Yeah. And so at what point did you make the transition to, hey, I'm going to try this small group stuff out?
It was probably maybe 2017, I want to say, because we had just moved into, which is our last location, not this current location, but our previous location that was right around the corner from here. We just moved into there 2016. And what we did was we started to build out the space to develop the concept. So we didn't necessarily start it right away, but we started to build out and have the idea of putting some of those smaller group kind of pods into the build out as we went into there 2016.
Nice. I like it. And so did it take off? Where did the vision of flex pop up, right? Because at some point you said, man, I'm going to stop just adding square footage, because that fast location now is like 10,000 square feet. It's huge, right? How big is it?
Yeah. It's like anywhere between 95 and 10,000 square feet.
So at what point did you say, man, I got this huge location, let's just do small group and open up these flex models that are like, how big is the average flex? 2,000 square feet?
2,000 square feet. Yeah. You know what? I'll backtrack. So at first it was a very slow build with our current flay hives. I didn't have anything to differentiate it just yet. I will say that our large group classes at that point were so good and so in depth that our current members didn't see the value in the small group price increase of like, hey, why would I do that when I have this over here? So we really had to dial in on how we were differentiating. And quote unquote, making that a premium service that warranted a higher price point. So it was definitely a slow build. We did the typical things like we would run a challenge and include for our current members, like, hey, you get one small group a week on top of your current membership. We would do all sorts of deals like, hey, this month, if you upgrade, all different type of upgrade, internal style marketing. And then all of our focus went on trying to build that up. So like that became like our main service core offering for our adults of like, hey, you get 1, 2, or 3 small group, and then all these other classes are a way to supplement it.
Sure.
So that's what we did. Fast forward into what would be 2020, because we opened in 2021 of April 2021 for our first flex location. I always knew I wanted multiple locations. That was a goal, but I knew that my current Flay Hives location was super complicated and complex to multiply it. So I knew I had to strip some things away and figure out kind of one focus and then try to multiply off of that. I basically went through all of our, at its core, I went through all of the things that we did. And it was just like, hey, what's the best thing to do? Like, yeah, you could go athletes, absolutely. And you can create multiple locations out of like just an athlete program. But as people that train athletes know, it's very seasonal. It's very ups and downs. You have huge swings. It's really tough to multiply off of that. So I was like, hey, that's not going to be it. Your large group model is really tough to differentiate because you have places like Orange Theory, F45, Barry's Bootcamp, Burn Bootcamp, all that stuff that have huge financial backing behind it. So where, hey, the sole owner, sole operator is going to be tough to compete with that. It was almost like a race to the bottom of pricing. So didn't do that. And then it was like, hey, small group personal training. I think this is the one because it's a little bit of a higher price point. It's a way that we can differentiate and create a environment atmosphere that we provide customized training for people that are anywhere from 40 to 60 plus years old that want that higher level experience, higher level of training and personalization, and they can afford it. And so that's how we landed on that.
I don't think you were at the talk that I did. Were you at the talk that I did at Meglio's place on the focused model where I kind of broke down the different stuff? I think you were gone at that point. So like,
yeah, I think I was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a gym owner the other day that like just knew who you were. They knew the flexes and some of the other folks kind of in our circle and universe that have done that similar kind of small group model. I did a talk on that in like 2018 at Joe Meglio's place about the benefits of this smaller focused model. One type of offering, that means you only need one type of coach. You're selling one type of offer. You're getting really good at the one thing. And the small group is obviously this really, it's a high margin deal. And what I've found with the average gym owner in comparison to like an Orange Theory or whatever, yeah, you can take the financial backing, and those tend to be like, there's a big difference between the kid who's a personal trainer that's got 20 clients and is trying to go open a large group training location in a franchise that is well capitalized and whatnot. There's a huge difference there between those guys. But the other thing that I've seen in the, I don't know what you call it, right? I feel like we're coaches at heart that end up becoming business owners versus folks that are like investing in the fitness industry and are investors first, is that we as coaches first are not typically willing to water down our product enough to be able to pull the numbers that an Orange Theory is going to pull. Because they say Orange Theory is only charging 150, 169, what have you. Yeah, well, Orange Theory is popping 30, 40 people into a session at the same time. And you're not willing to provide a service that like, just the very nature of having that many people in a session, you have to water it down, right? Absolutely. You have to dilute the attention that you're giving each client. And a lot of us aren't willing to do that. And so when I have folks that are considering the large group model, number one, it's infinitely more competitive. You've got Orange Theory, Berries, all the things that you said, F45, et cetera, that are playing in that sandbox. That clientele, the clientele that can go to a large group training business, they can do Peloton. They can do all these streaming platforms. Absolutely. They can train on their own and not get hurt. Whereas the target market that you're going after, where I'm curious is like, where did the light bulb go off where you're like, I think I'm going to freaking do this small group thing? Was it just observing and being smart? Like, where did this come from?
I would say that it was be a number of things. I was observing, but I tend to oversimplify everything. Like I tend to oversimplify it in a way that I don't like a lot of moving parts. So with the small group personal training, I knew a couple different things. So I knew that they were a higher price service that was going to demand a higher price client. So I found that they tended to stay longer. Like that was something that I observed in our headquarters, that they tended to stay longer. They tended to not be as big of a pain in the, because the large group model, usually it's a pricing. It's everyone's just racing to the bottom. It's like, yeah, but that place is 199. Oh, well, I found a place for 189. I found a place for 179 and all that stuff, because again, they're fitting 30 people, 20 to 30 people in a 2,000 square foot place. So it's not you're not competing on quality, you're competing on price, and you're competing on how many people can I fit in this space. Like you said, you're generally watering down all of your programming, all of your whole experience, because it's like, how can I scale this to have 30 people in this place? And I'm like, hey, I would rather have to really take care of 120 to 130 people instead of 330 people. From every single aspect, I knew that I would be able to control my staff in those locations. Well, we could dive into this a little bit deeper, but I have anywhere from 1.5. So one facility leader, we call it, plus a part-time coach, or 2 full staff. So a facility leader and a full-time coach. I knew that would probably be impossible if I were to run the schedule that we currently run in our small group model. For if we were to run it in a large group model, that would be impossible. We would need to have more payroll, more staffing. I knew that if I'm running, just everything, just from the footprint that we have, from the actual location that we have, from the equipment needs that we have, everything was just, it all pointed towards, hey, this large group model does not make sense to run. And everything kind of just put me in a direction where I thought the small group personal training model was definitely the right choice. It was definitely the most sustainable, and it was definitely the easiest way to differentiate yourself if you have a really good core service and experience.
I think you said, oh, I tend to oversimplify things. I would not call you an oversimplifier. Like, I think you're deeply intelligent in that you're trying to make things as simply as possible. I think the biggest mistake that people, I shouldn't say the biggest mistake, right? You say that one thing is the biggest thing, and then it's like, whatever. But one of the bigger mistakes that people make is they try to make things too complicated. And the reality, if you try to have all these different service areas, particularly now, like I think we all had the benefit of having time to figure shit out. So we had time to get really good at training athletes and also get like really good at training adults. And the market was a little bit more forgiving, I think, when we were growing up, right? There wasn't an Orange Theory or F45 or whatever it was on every corner. And so one of the questions that I'll ask people now, what are you going to be able to do better and really be world-class at and differentiate yourself? Because Orange Theory's been doing this across thousands of locations, and that's all they do is large group. Are you going to be able to be the best in your market, let alone the best in the world? Are you going to be able to be the best in your market, focusing on one type of service and getting really, 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 really good and dialed at that? Or are you going to be able to like that versus,
yeah,
let me do large group, let me do small group, let me do athletes, let me do youth athletes, let me do some speed camps, let me do some yoga. Like, which one is going to be able to win and dominate?
When someone says, hey, why do you do that? Because they see our flay hives, like our headquarters, and they're like, why don't you just redo? There's athletes in those towns. Why don't you train athletes XYZ? And I kind of explain it. It's like, we ran a really big restaurant with a really big menu. And now what we're going to do is just take one of our best menu items on that menu and make a specialty restaurant. It's like running a huge, complicated restaurant. And now all I'm going to do is I make really good hot dogs. I'm going to open up a hot dog stand, and we could be the best at hot dogs. And this helped us become really good at what we do. But if we have a coach in our headquarters, a typical day, they train a large group class, which is a different workout. They train a small group, which is a different workout. They train a junior high class or middle school class or middle school session, which is a different workout. And they train a high school session, which is a different workout. So they could realistically be within a shift, train 4 different programs, 4 wildly different workouts. And it's just like, for them to take on those, obviously training a 60-year-old woman, you need a different hat on versus, pardon the pun there, GR. If
you want to talk about hats?
And nope. You need a very different hat to train a 6-year-old woman in the way that she needs to be trained than an 11-year-old kid. And they could literally do that from a back. They could train a kid at 4 o'clock and train a 6-year-old woman at 6 or 5 o'clock. It's just tough to do over and over and over again. And you can become really good at it because we were so intentional about the customer experience that we needed to deliver. But it's way simpler just to focus in on one thing and to go all in on that one thing. And that's what we did with the flex locations.
How many people do you have programming for Flay Hives, and how many people do you have programming for Flex?
So what we have done is we've tried to make, again, everything simple. We have essentially 3 people that for Flay Hives because we've tried to spread out the time intensity that it takes to do that. But we have one centralized director of training that oversees those 3 people, and then that same person oversees all the programming for Flex location.
Yeah, it's like one person can do your 3 locations.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So you open your first Flex location. Scary, butt puckery. Did it take off right away? Like, when did you figure out, this could be the thing we scale?
I knew before it even took off, I knew it was the thing that we were going to scale. I didn't open up a second gym until 10 years into my career. So I think I had the foresight enough to see that, hey, if this thing doesn't take off right away, it's because of what I'm doing. And that would just make me want to figure out and tweak things more to be able to just expedite how fast it takes off and how fast it can scale. So I knew that it was in a scale. We opened in April of 2021. We have an amazing operator at that location who's become our chief of operations for the entire Flex company now. GR, you know him. He's no longer allowed in San Antonio ever again. But a lot of it is who the people are around you. He's awesome and continues to be awesome for us. But again, the model is that if you market it correctly and you provide the right experience, it's just a matter of time. We definitely had to work out a little bit of a learning curve, work out some kinks early on to see, just based on the location. In Flay Hives, we're an industrial warehouse. In our Flex models, we're right in the heart of downtown in a retail space. So kind of the learning curve of how we needed to figure out that was different. Here we have all mostly moms and dads that were an introduction somehow, some way, because they knew of us for athlete training. There we're right in the downtown area. We have so many, like, not high rise, but like 10-story condo buildings that would not even surface around here in Niles, our main location. So we had to figure out how to market to those people and to get a hand in all of the business and happenings that are going on in downtown areas. So it's just a different way, a different approach again, but we just had to kind of figure out a way to attack that. And we caught our stride and we opened up 3 in 18 months, and we'll continue to scale that model because of the upside and simplicity of it.
So ballpark margins, where are the Flex locations sitting at now? Once they get relatively healthy, where do those margins sit at 100 to 130 members?
They're right around 40+% margins.
Wow. So more focused model, less stress.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's why when Mark is about to get on, he just loves stress. He's a glutton for stress. He has 4, obviously you'll do one of these with him, but he has 4 gyms that are massive in size, massive in programs, massive in revenue, everything. And so it's basically, he's got 4, what would be our headquarters. And I could not imagine that. He is probably one of the only humans on earth that could handle that and that amount of stress and that amount of moving parts. I opted not to have anything to do with that. I wanted to go simple. I wanted to keep it simple. I think we found something in a model that checks all those boxes.
So I don't know if I want to name drop the gentleman that happens to be your COO and happened to be a great party animal with us in San Antonio when you couldn't make it. By the way, you just mentioned San Antonio. Next retreat's in Vegas. Wonder if he's going to make a surprise visit there.
He's busy.
Oh, okay. He's busy. But where did you think you were going to go run that second location? Or did you say, no, Tyler's the guy?
Tyler's the guy. It's who, not how. Big fan of that. It's finding the right people and putting those right people in the right seats and giving them the correct roles and then just helping them navigate and lead them in those roles. I would not have planned to go run that myself. I've known Tyler since he was, I think, 13 or 14 years old, trained him in our athlete program. Super sharp dude, super motivated. He's one of the people that makes me like have to check myself to make sure that I'm ready to go, because I know whatever we're doing, if we're having a meeting or if we're having a conversation, that dude is dialed in and ready to go. So he pushes me, and it's a great relationship. And if you have the right people in place, it makes everything else easier. We've had to deal with some turnover in other places, and it all dealt with the who of the who. You know what I mean? So like when you have that right person, things just accelerate and things start to really fall into place. And otherwise, if you don't have that right who, you know, with our models and our systems, we'll continue to make progress, but it will be a slow, meticulous progress. Everything is just, man, what the why is this taking, you know, not even taking so long, but like we're fighting ourselves. And it's just like when you find that right person, and now that we're opening multiple, it's like, what's our hiring system? What's our hiring process to continue to replicate that, to find the right people? So we're not continuously fighting ourselves. As we get bigger, just it's a new set of challenges and all that stuff.
Let's go back to the first flex, right? Tyler, I didn't realize that he had that like dialed in business mentality on one side. I do know that he's very much one of those humans that you talk to for 3 seconds and it's immediately like you feel like he's everybody's best friend, right?
Yeah.
So he makes people feel welcome. You can tell that he has the talent to be a great salesperson. Was he already selling it fast? Did you know that he was going to move into
No,
that?
no.
No. Wow. So you just knew that he had the talent and said, you're going to go run this place?
Yep.
Impressive. Most impressive. So he starts it up. You have a part-time trainer there as you kick things off, or what did that process look like?
Nope. Nope. So now what we've done is we've dialed in to where we hit certain metrics, which trigger us to bring on the second trainer and all that stuff. But on that first one, we were very much figure out as we go. I probably held off a little bit too long on that first one, just because of the person I knew I had with Tyler, where he was going to grind it out. Retrospectively, I would have brought that person in maybe 5 to 10 members sooner. So we brought someone in probably around 65 to 75 members, maybe slightly higher. He may listen to this and be like, you're a liar. We waited until 90 members. I don't recall, but wish I would have brought someone on just slightly sooner, just so to keep him way further away from that, not burnout stage, but just holy shit, this is a lot. And now as we've continued to refine, we have you guys doing our pre-sale gym member machine, doing our pre-sale. So now we just have metrics in place, triggers in place to know when, hey, here's how long we're running our pre-sale. Here's opening day. Here's what we're doing after opening day. If we hit this amount of members, we're bringing on this. It's just become more of a refined process.
So you're going to go open the next flex, right? What makes you decide, all right, it's time? Cash flow in the other locations? Is it just finding the right lease? Where does your head go there?
It's funny. We've actually, a lot of it was feel, and then knowing when I'm going to look for that next lease, and then knowing the right location, which is all well and good. As we get bigger, I've had to develop different skill sets and level up my own leadership. I'm like, hey, we'll figure it out as we go. As we've gotten bigger and more people involved, I've realized that I drive people crazy because of my personality and just whatever. But now what we do, taking off the level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 of a business, of stages of business, we look at level 1 as anywhere from 1 to 50 members. We look at level 2 as 51 to, I want to say 80 members or 79 members. And then whatever it is, we cannot open up another location if we have 2 locations in stage 2.
So you got to be beyond that.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, go to the next thing.
And that's just my way of not driving people crazy and overworking them. But yeah, we'll get to a point where we'll open up multiple locations at a single time. And I think that can help us expedite some of the pre-sale stuff, some of the onboarding stuff with our facility leaders, because we can really dial in some focus on that and focus energy on that. So I think we struck the right chord with the right model that we're going after. I think we have a lot of things done correctly just because we chose the right spot. I was actually just talking to Mark about some real estate stuff, and he said something that stuck out to me, was that you make a lot of your money on the buy. So yeah, you could do a lot of things. You can force appreciation, you know, the market can go upwards, but if you buy incorrectly or emotionally, you're probably not going to put yourself in the best position. I think we put ourselves in a really good position because we have the right model, we have the right experience, and we have everything, the business model and all that stuff. I think we chose correctly. And so now we can scale pretty quickly and refine things as we go to get more detailed and to get more efficient. But it all deals with having the correct model.
Interesting. I like it. And so do you typically, are you finding a location first, or is it a situation where, man, I've got my next facility leader here, I've got a trainer who's really showing some talent? What comes first, chicken or the egg here?
Both. So with our second location, we had the guy and then found the location. Third location, we found the location and then hired the guy. I think it really depends. I think there's a lot of ways that you can go about it. I thought we were going to always hire from our headquarters and then move someone over there. There's positives and negatives of that, because then you start to kind of cannibalize your main location. And our main location is a pretty massive business and pretty damn profitable. I think it's just, you have to decide on what you're doing, weigh the consequences, weigh the positives, and hey, what are you willing to live with? So I think we have a really good recruiting and hiring process now. So I think we'll try to lean on that a little bit more instead of cannibalizing play hives. But, our main thing is that we want to provide healthy, sustainable careers for our trainers. So whether that's like showing them, hey, you're coming in at this, but here's the opportunity and here's the upward trajectory that you can get to. We're in a really good stage of growth right now where there's a lot of that. So if a trainer comes in as a part-time trainer or a full-time trainer, just a trainer, like, it's to show like, here's the proven process. Here's what this person came in as. Here's where they're currently at. And then here's the continued growth possibilities, so.
That's such a strength, I feel like, on the recruiting side, right? Like we talked about it in Charleston where you decided to skip out on, where like there's why do employees leave if they're not getting fired, right? It's, well, they don't see a vision in your company that's big enough to fit their future into, right?
Absolutely.
And you're creating a situation where, man, I can see like Tyler was just a trainer, and now he's this, or this person was just a trainer and now they're managing their own location and, almost a gym owner essentially.
It's funny. It's not to interrupt you, but I essentially created, like, how you do client showcases. I did trainer showcases, and I created like a landing page to try to recruit and entice trainers. And it just shows like, hey, my director of training started back with me like 2012 or 2013 at like 11 or 13 bucks an hour as a part-time trainer. And now he's our director of training. If you can find ways to grow and scale, and you're trying to provide a really good experience for your clients, but also you got to provide a really good experience and work environment for your trainers. And then they're going to be the ones that help you grow.
So the question that's burning in my mind, I want to open a flex, right? How much does it, obviously I know you're not licensing and franchising the model, so I'm not talking about buying a flex thing from you. Though one day, hey, maybe that's a thing. What's the typical cash outlay to get a flex up and running on average? Or what's the range that you can give us? Oh, I'm thinking about opening a location like this.
So our footprint is about 2,000 square feet right in, or we call it a buy box. A buy box is about 2,000 square feet right in the downtown area. So very walkable retail location. We try to get somewhat of a vanilla box, so there's not a huge amount of build out. And so what we would look at would probably be anywhere from 80 to 100,000 per location on the build out and outfit of it. Now,
on build out and outfit, not counting facility director or marketing budget,
I would probably add another. It would honestly, everything is predicated on how much build out there is. You could probably, on the high end of that, the 100, you could probably squeeze in, depending on what your plan is for marketing or how long your pre-sale will take. You could probably squeeze in near that 100. If you're including the labor for that, I would probably plan for like 110.
Wow. And so how long is your facility director typically employed before you're actually servicing sessions, if they're the one doing the sales?
Usually about 8 weeks.
Okay. And at this point, the facility director is doing the sales for each of the facilities, and it's not just
we moved away from that. We moved away from that. So now we have a centralized quote unquote management launch team.
So they're doing the pre-sales for each location, which means that you don't necessarily have to hire that facility director way ahead of time.
Correct.
That saves you a nice chunk. And now the big number up front is just your build out. You got a little bit of a marketing budget, and then there you go. Because one reason I asked is just out of pure curiosity, because I don't think we've ever gone in detail on this, even outside the lines here. But another one, I literally was just talking to a guy who's looking to open a facility. He's like, yeah, like I'm waiting on investors and da-da-da. I was like, how much are you trying to get? And he says, we're trying to get to about 600K for his first location. And I'm like, what? Why do we need 600K?
Yeah.
And I told him, I gave him a couple of resources, but it's like, man, I really feel like we could get open.
And honestly, like you could beat my number by quite a bit. We try to outfit them pretty nicely. We, not that it really matters, but we do all rogue stuff and we try to buy towards the higher end. But there's places like, I don't know if you want to get into it, but like Titan Fitness and all that stuff, where I think they've come a long way, where you could probably take my 80 to 100 and make it 60 to 80, including your marketing budget. I think the biggest thing is we're right around 2,000 square feet. We're 6-to-1 model. Everything is built around that idea. So,
6-to-1 model doing kind of modified whiteboardy stuff, or is everyone getting their own? Is it what industry folks would call semi-private?
It's probably as close to semi-private without being semi-private. So what we do is we have 3 tiers, columns of buckets of where that client would fit in. And then they have a track based upon that bucket. And so we try to make it as easy as possible. And this is our director of training. His magic that comes through is if level 1, level 2, level 3, it's essentially level 2 is our base. Level 1 is a regression. Level 3 is a progression. So we try to make it as easy and seamless as possible for our trainers.
And 6-to-1, or you want to run one group at a time, or are you doing like 12-to-2?
No, one group at a time. So we originally were looking at some larger spaces to run 2 groups. And in the retail space, it's just becomes such a larger number as you get into that 4,000 square feet or 3,500, 4,000 square feet. It just didn't make sense. The math didn't make sense. Math matters. Remember?
Yeah. Math matters.
Yeah.
We were joking before the episode.
44 views, no big deal.
Yeah. We've started to post some social media content and haven't done any following or asking people to follow. So Connor's video was the winner of the first 8 or 9 posts, got a whopping 144 views.
Moneymaker.
On our literal 2 followers at the time. So Connor's winning that race. And honestly, this episode has been freaking fire. I don't know if it's because we're missing Grumpy Bear here, if Grumpy Bear wants to hop on and ask a question. But before we jump to that, Connor, anything else that you want to share that you feel like we've missed or glossed over too hard? Like, what are we missing here?
No, I think you can do whatever the hell you want to do in terms of your model. I'm not here to talk you into doing this model. I'm not looking for more competitors anyway, but I think if you really sat down and took all emotion out of it, it points you to this direction. And if you're being honest with yourself, I think it's pretty clear on if you are training adults versus training athletes, the adults are going to be more consistent, right? If you're training adults, do you want the lower price option, which is going to be your large group model, your higher price option, which is going to be your small group model? You have to make that decision. I leaned towards the higher price model, and I think it's allowing us to scale pretty quickly. Not to bring something random up, but I think F45 is going bankrupt, isn't it?
Oh, I haven't seen that. But...
Oh, yeah. We have multiple closing around us.
Yeah.
We actually ran a pre-sale in our Glenview location at the exact same time we ran the F45 ran a pre-sale, and they're already closing in under a year. So it's tough to compete. It's tough to compete in that market. It's tough to compete with guys like Mark in the athlete/adult model. And it's way more expensive. So again, you can make your own decisions. I hope you guys took some pointers from this, and hopefully this was of value.
Yeah, I think this just is a banger of an episode. And I've been fortunate enough to get lessons from you from even way back in the day in terms of simplicity. And I've told you how much I think of your intelligence and simplicity and things like that, both personally and in front of groups when I do my really nice intro to get you to speak and whatnot. But your messenger script made me a bunch of money on Facebook ads. I literally copy and pasted your messenger script. I think this is another example of Connor dropping exceptional value bombs. Mark says it's 50-50. Mark hopped in late. Grumpy Bear is going to have to do some real work to
change that angle, Mark. Change that angle.
There we go. Are we getting leaner? We got a little Vegas bet going. But if you
No.
got value out of this episode, guys, do us a favor. Share it with a gym owner who you think would get some value out of it. Follow the podcast, give it a little 5-star review and whatnot. Any of the nice things that you can do on the different platforms to show the platforms that you don't exactly hate us. Because Connor really, I think, was about as generous as you could be with the details here. And if you got more questions, stuff you want to hear more of, let us know in the comments on whatever platform you're listening to. But good stuff, guys. Love hugs. We'll see you in the next episode.